Ruth is part owner and chief operations officer for a large customer service contractor. Her company handles inbound and outbound customer service communications for several large retailers throughout the U.S. She is typical of many business owners, high-level managers, and IT professionals in many industries. She has significant issues, challenges, and problems in communications, information, and technology. Ruth bought into the company 5 years ago when it was a single office with 20 employees handling a single account. But Ruth had a good head on her shoulders. She understood her business and found a niche she could exploit. She understood her business and how to make it succeed. Flush with capital, Ruth put her money to work and bought 2 other contact centers within the last year to keep up with demand. She now has 75 employees in 3 locations. Ruth is great at her business. She knew how to make it profitable and expand. This does not mean that she is good at communications, information, and technology. In fact, she is discovering that issues in communication and technology are taking up more and more of her time, and new problems seem to be happening more often. She decided to task her IT manager, Peter, to explore the issues and prepare a report and present the findings at an owners' meeting. Here is what Peter found. First, each of the contact centers has a different phone system. This was not by design. When they acquired each office, the phone systems were under contract, one for 3 years, the other for 2. The 3 systems seemed compatible but did not work well together. Initially, it took several people several days to get the systems to route calls between each other. Now, several months later, it seems that the solution then is not working now. Additionally, the person who fixed the last big problem took another job and is no longer with the company. Second, 2 of the systems are more than 5 years old. At one location, it seems that nearly every phone has a problem. At the other, the software that runs the system is easily corrupted, creating unnecessary downtime. And the newest software update is not compatible with the old phone system. By looking at detailed analysis, it is also apparent that the phone system in all 3 locations are not running efficiently. But Peter is worried that if he makes changes to the system to try to increase efficiency, it will create more problems than it solves. He is worried about the stability of the systems, and there are just too many things that could go wrong and limited support for the older systems. None of Ruth's systems were easily upgraded to support at-home workers. Ruth has lost business because she could not accept clients with seasonal business because she did not have the flexibility of adding temporary at-home workers to all of her systems. In addition, she lost her best service agent because her spouse took a job out of state, and Ruth could not justify implementing more software on a system to support a single at-home worker. Peter has also discovered that one location is at its maximum in number of handsets. The current system cannot add another phone without a replacement of the core phone system. This situation is known as the $10,000 phone. It is a point where the system capacity is reached, and to expand it, even by a single phone, line, or trunk, requires a substantial capital outlay. He also found problems in their mobility services. 15 managers at all 3 locations had mobile phones throughout the company. 6 were on one plan, 5 on another. The remaining 4 were being reimbursed to use their own phones for business purposes. Almost every phone was on a different plan, paying a different time of the month, and no discounts were being used to lower the costs. Last year, a manager had left the company. This manager was being reimbursed for her phone, so she was allowed to take the phone with her when she left. Unfortunately, that meant that she took the contact number the company was publishing on her business card. It was no wonder that 2 of the company's largest accounts switched to the competitor where that manager went to work. Peter knew that by allowing a published number to go to a competitor greatly contributed to the loss of the business. Peter also found that one of the managers had lost their phone, but no one knew the serial number, so the company had to spend extra time and resources to activate a replacement phone. Peter also found problems in their hosted services. He discovered that one location had a very expensive voice and web conferencing subscription with a monthly commitment that no one used because the person who set it up and was able to run it was no longer with the company. It sat neglected with no one using it, but paying for it monthly. To make matters worse, no one knew where the contract was to determine the correct rates and when it could be terminated or renegotiated. Contracts are another major issue. Between the three locations, there were multiple contracts for voice and data, hosted services, managed services, and mobility. Nearly every day of the month, an invoice was due for a product or service. Accounting is not tasked to assess functionality or usability. Even if they had the time, they don't know what they're looking for and have no system for centrally storing contracts to compare against the bills. They were never trained in communications and technology bill analysis. Peter felt that there were multiple problems with the billing, but told Ruth he was unsure of how to solve any of them. Peter also found that he did not possess the expertise to handle all the issues. He was a network engineer whose main job was to keep the computers and software that ran the business up and running. He had little training in communications, hosted and managed services to data, voice, and mobility. There was no way to keep up on his own functional area, let alone become an expert in communications and specialized technology. Frustrated, he told the managers that he had looked outside the company for information and answers. He was not impressed with what he found. It was easy to find multiple salespeople who sold products in one specific area, but lacked expertise to ensure that they would work in connection with the other areas. In nearly every discussion, he felt like the salesperson was only trying to sell their product, not work with him to solve the larger issues. Furthermore, no one seemed to have a solution to handle the endless contract problems. He found that spending so much time with multiple salespeople put him further behind, and his workload increased as he tried to research solutions. Peter knew that he needed outside help, but worried about looking for a consultant. He worried that if someone else was brought in, it would adversely affect his budget, or worse, his position. The last thing he wanted was to bring in someone else that knew more than he did and take over his job. However, he asked Ruth and the other owners what he should do, now that he had exposed several problems. Like Peter, the owners knew that the only way to solve this was to bring in someone who had expertise, knowledge, resources, and experience in all the areas of concern. They again tasked Peter to find a consultant to help. Ruth had faith in Peter and expressed her belief that Peter could find the solutions. This is where you come in. You see, Peter had called his buddy Gordon, who's an IT manager at another company, to express frustration a week ago. You happen to be meeting with Gordon today to do a basic discovery meeting. In your presentation, you get to the point where you have been trained to go through the referral process and ask for referrals. Now, you briefly think about wimping out and not asking for the referral when you see the wimp junction symbol on the discovery form. You remember it's better to ask for referrals than it is to make cold calls, and that you're only asking if he knows someone that needs your help. So you ask Gordon if he knows anyone who needs his help. This is how you met Peter a week later, and Ruth the week after that. This is how you presented a comprehensive voice and data system, mobility solutions, concierge core services ECMS, and several other hosted and managed systems. Over the course of the year, you became Ruth and Peter's single source, helping them solve most of their issues. By asking for a referral, you earned more than $100,000 in commissions over the next 5 years, and gained a client that could renew those contracts for a considerable amount of time. Ruth has become a great reference for you, and Peter has come to rely on you as someone he can bounce ideas off of before taking action. You have become their trusted resource. So let's review the pain points that businesses are feeling right now as they wait for you to call or ask for referrals. These are not in order of importance because each business will be different and value them differently. Your job is to understand, remember, and listen for them as you work with your prospects. This is important because they are not going to come out and say, "This gives me pain." You will have to listen carefully and learn to recognize the key phrases that indicate pain. Neglect is when a business neglects their communication and technology. Sometimes this is because they're busy doing whatever it is that they do to make a profit. But other times, it's because they don't have the heart, the will, or the desire to tackle the larger problems. Often, they will blame neglect on a lack of budget. Many companies implement new systems only with the initial cost in mind and starve the system of a budget for proper maintenance. Neglect causes problems in software and hardware. Software is corrupted over time and hardware breaks down. Old equipment often does not work with new programming and features. manufacturers actually build in obsolescence. Neglect often causes a decrease in efficiency, productivity, and effectiveness. It also increases cost and time to maintain old equipment and software. Stability issues arise from changing the system's original configuration. This may include adding hardware or software, functionality, or changing settings. Often, a simple change can lead to a cascading effect throughout the system. Stability affects uptime, or the time the system can be used. Often, even required updates can cause unforeseen problems. In addition, it may require additional training for people that support or use the system. If the system has any customization to it, updates are likely to either break the system or they may forego the update in fear of downtime due to their customization. It increases downtime when it needs to be fixed. This costs the business time, money, and customers. Expertise, or the lack thereof, is another pain point. This comes in all flavors and sizes. For example, one person, like Peter, is often tasked to solve a problem. They learn all they need to know to make it work. They create, buy, or cobble together a solution that only they understand. Because there is more than one technical way to solve most problems, solutions are often more art than tech creating even a bigger problem. When the person that implemented the solution leaves, their knowledge goes with them. The more a system is changed, the more knowledge is created. If that knowledge is not shared or expertise is not cultivated, a business is at risk. Another flavor of this is when an employee is tasked to buy, create, or cobble together a solution that is above their knowledge, skill, or expertise. Businesses often work with who and what they have, not who and what they need. This frequently causes problems in functionality, connectivity, and usability. It is important to note that many times you will be presenting or meeting with these same people. Care and tact should be taken in telling anyone that what they are doing isn't working because someone didn't know what they were doing. Growth, and to some extent downsizing, in a business is a huge pain point. Too often, a solution sold to a business is not scalable to meet their needs. For example, a business has 91 employees. Therefore, a salesperson sells a system that can handle 100 phones. The business expands and hires 10 new people. However, when they go to plug in that 101st phone, it doesn't work. The only way to get it to work is to buy a new phone base unit. Remember the $10,000 phone? That's what this is. And it costs companies a great deal of time, resources, and capital. Growth pain is also caused by acquisition. Think about Ruth's business. She acquired 2 additional offices, each with their own phone system, communications network, and their own contracts. The acquisition acquired pain and caused issues throughout her company. Systems do not often work well together, nor are they easily managed. Each system has its own manual, its own instructions, and its own problems. It also takes a coordinated effort for someone to manage the timing of contract expirations to get the company in a position to implement a single cohesive system. Most business owners and managers don't have the systems to track the contracts or the time to manage single-sourced replacement projects on their own. Contracts are one of the biggest pain points of any business. Think back to Ruth's company. Peter told her that there was an invoice for almost every day of the month. This means that there are multiple contracts for multiple products to multiple providers. Additional contracts to primary contracts are known as adds and can be coterminous, meaning that they have all the same end date as the primary contract, or non-coterminous, meaning that they all have different days that they will end. Should the business want to replace the primary and all the add contracts, they will likely have a large early termination penalty for the adds. This causes serious pain for the business. Additionally, pain is also caused when a business does not have a centralized decision process. Multiple people may be making decisions about different parts of the communication, information, and technology systems. This causes inefficiencies, missed discounts, technology overlap, deficient systems, duplication, and incompatibility. Without a way to manage all the contracts, it is not cohesive, it is unruly, and it doesn't work. It will take time to understand the nuances of these pain points. The key is to listen and ask additional questions. For example, if the person you are talking to says, "I spent 5 hours yesterday working on our phones," you need to ask additional questions such as, "What was the problem?" and "When you solved it, was it a permanent fix or a temporary one?" By asking open-ended questions, you will start to discover their pain points. The more questions you ask and wait for the answer, the more they will tell you. The key is to keep asking when you think you have discovered a pain point. You never want to waste an opportunity to explore pain. Solutions are often found when pain is revealed, explored, and discussed. Be sure to be positive, listen actively, and take notes. Remember, the more you care about their pain, the more receptive they will be to your solution.